Have the latest on the investigation.
Trapped passengers.
They were trapped basically in between the seats and with the roof on top of them, because the wall peeled away and was just like rolled right over them.
Once out, the injured had to be transported down an icy embankment to emergency vehicles. Others were brought down by the fire department. Passenger Tony Dillon helped others get out.
See people hurt, and you see, metal and bodies all twisted up together. So I just started helping more people I could help.
Most of the walking wounded appeared to be off already. A lot of people helping each other. The people who were uninjured all were holding on to or attending to somebody who was already down.
The accident happened just before this bridge, which is known locally as the Gauntlet. That's because the tracks merge, and there's only room for one train to cross at a time. It's up to federal investigators to determine why the trains sideswiped each other just before the bridge. Both engineers survived the collision and were taken away for routine drug and alcohol testing by the National Transportation Safety Board. The engineer of one of the trains involved in today's crash was among those faulted in a similar accident in 1985.
And then I knew everything was flying all over the place.
There was panic and people were just saying, get out, get out.
One passenger said the impact seemed to take place in slow motion as two commuter trains collided in Gary, Indiana. The lead cars on the trains, carrying about 100 people, were peeled open as metal ripped into metal.
The wall passed through each train, sort of like a big razor blade.
The trains did not derail, but came to rest high atop a hillside on a narrow bridge. The location and sub-freezing temperatures hampered rescuers as they brought out the dead and injured. At least 7 were killed and more than 50 injured. According to witnesses, one train heading west from Chicago, the other heading east from South Bend, Indiana, sideswiped one another on the approach to the bridge where the two tracks merge. Passengers on one train said their driver left his seat and suddenly ran towards them, diving just before the collision.
I thought, maybe he should have said something like get down or a scream or something, but he said nothing.
Investigators are not sure if human error or a mechanical problem may have been responsible for the crash, but rescuers are thankful for something. The accident happened on a holiday and after morning rush hour, timing, they say, that saved lives. Linda Tyra, CBS News, New York.
Coming up next.
Metal. Rescue workers had to use saws to cut victims free.
A lady in front of me was sitting sideways. All of a sudden, something hit her window and shattered it. And I said, oh, get down, get down.
Authorities said the body of a 10-year-old child was among those removed from the wreckage. The National Transportation Safety Board will try to determine whether one train crew ignored a signal to stop or whether the signal itself failed. The collision killed indiscriminately. A rescue worker said one passenger survived, even though people seated in front of and behind him were killed. The timing of the accident after the morning rush hour and on a holiday may have been fortunate because the train carried fewer passengers than normal. Bob Jameson, ABC News.
In Southern California today, the consequence.
And then once I saw stuff coming at me and I thought I might get hit, I dove to the floor.
Then the survivors looked up and saw the horror of the worst train wreck here in 20 years.
Live from WBBM-TV Chicago.
Arakawa.
And I'm Lester Holding tonight for Bill Curtis.
The train disaster in Gary, Indiana happened just after 9:30 this morning at the height of the busy morning commute. But this commute would be like no other for 100 passengers aboard 2 ill-fated trains. This is what it looked like from above. The 2 long, sleek trains on the narrow tracks. One train headed eastbound from Chicago, the other headed westbound from South Bend, Indiana. They collided while trying to pass one another. It was a horrifying sight for the first firefighters to arrive on the scene. These rescuers carefully carry the dead down a narrow hill. All of the dead were found at the front of each train. Right now, area hospitals are reporting 65 people injured from the deadly collision, but investigators still don't know what caused the crash. The impact caused this huge gaping hole in the train. The flying metal ripped through the cabin of the train, killing some of the passengers. Channel 2's Rob Stafford has been covering the train disaster all day and begins our team coverage now from Gary. Rob?
Adele, commuter train number 7 was eastbound from Chicago this morning. Commuter train number 12 was westbound from South Bend, Indiana. The front corners of each of these trains collided here in Gary, Indiana at 9:37 this morning. The crash killed 7 people. The first rescue team found passengers pinned beneath their seats. The impact so strong it ripped open the side of each train. Witnesses heard a loud bang and then the cries for help.
The people who were screaming, the people who were standing up, they wanted out.
What did you see inside that car?
Blood, whole bunch of mess. And the conductor told me, do not come in. And I did not come in.
Ambulances rushed to help the victims. For many, it was too late. Cherry pickers were used to lift some of the victims from the wreckage. Remarkably, the trains did not derail. If they had, the cars would have tumbled off this bridge to the ground below. And firefighters say the death toll would have been much higher. Still, it was hard to find any comfort in a scene like this. Two of the rail cars looked like crushed cans. Even the most experienced rescue workers were stunned by what they saw here today.
I deal with this every day. I work on a rescue squad, and this was one of the worst I've seen. This is one of the worst I've seen. We worked on the front train, and we discovered that there were more injured passengers on the second train, so we're going between trains trying to do the job of 2 or 3 people.
Authorities giving rescue teams high marks for their efforts in a very difficult scene today. For one, the train was up high. As we showed you, they needed the cherry pickers to remove some of the victims. Number two, many of the victims were trapped inside the wreckage and actually had to be cut out of the train. Tonight, everything is back to normal. The damaged trains have been removed from the tracks. We're told the South Shore commuter line is running on schedule tonight. Reporting live from Gary, Indiana, I'm Rob Stafford. Back to you, Lester.
Rob, thank you. The investigation into the train disaster is focusing on...
They had to lift prior to seat to get him out, and they just picked him up like that, just no head, no arm.
It was just a mess. I mean, you know, to me, it's not a sight worth wanting to come and see.
The investigation into how this happened is not complete. The crash came just west of a bridge over the Conrail tracks near Gary Regional Airport. The trains did not crash head-on. They weren't on the same track. The Gauntlet track system allows 2 tracks in opposing directions to use a single railroad bridge. What usually happens is that a signal light on one end shows red and in the other direction shows green, allowing one train to pass while the other one waits. Today's incident may have been human error in running a signal light or signal failure showing green in both directions. The lights can be tested from a remote location and have also been checked by investigators on the scene. There's no official word yet on the drivers involved. The trains were unhooked from their electric power source and towed away by a diesel engine. The signal lights have been tested both on the east and west side of this bridge. No confirmation yet on what those tests found, but certainly the attention is going to be focused on the South Bend bound train, the one that was out of position at the time of the accident. Ron?
Ray, you can take a look at the signal lights on our side of the Gauntlet Bridge, and it is showing a double red, and we've been watching as the trains have been passing through here, and these lights are working just fine tonight. If the bridge is available, then the top light goes from red to green. We've seen 2 trains come through now on the green, pass over the bridge, obviously without incident, and we understand that there is a paper trail that will be able to track whether this light was in fact working at the time of that collision earlier today. Let's go to Chesterton, where Channel 5's Phil Walters is standing by live now with the results of a news conference by South Shore officials.
Parents are divorced, and the mother drove from Lakeside, Michigan to our Michigan City, Indiana station, put him on train 12, where he was riding alone to the Randolph Street station at Chicago. At Randolph in Michigan, where the father was going to pick his son up, and they were going to spend some time together.
Other family members were called to area hospitals where their loved ones were being treated. The family of Karen Gaines watched as she was medevaced from Gary Methodist to Christ Hospital in Oak Lawn.
She has a broken pelvis on both sides, a broken leg, and a swelling of the brain.
Now, Gaines is one of 4 people who remains in critical or guarded condition this evening. She is suffering from a crushed pelvis and swelling of the brain. A Gary mother and her 2-year-old son also remain hospitalized at Methodist Hospital in Gary, but they are in stable condition after undergoing surgery. 35 people were taken to a hospital in Maryville. 34 of them were treated and released, and the 1 person that does remain there this evening is expected to be released shortly. Now, as we said, police are making a list of those who died and who are injured from today's accident, but they say at this late time in the day that most families should know by now. Reporting live from Gary, Sylvia Perez, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. Floyd?
Thank you, Sylvia. The police...
21 accident. As far as employee
records and discipline are concerned, we're going to review that, and there was discipline and human error involved in that accident. That accident resulted in significant arbitration and litigation of which we have no control over.
But union protection would be a factor then in his current position?
The fact that he was protected by a contract and there was an arbitrated decision that put him back to work, that's correct.
Mr. Reardon and the other motorman, a man named Willard Blewett, Bill Blewett, who is a senior motorman in his mid-60s, are now both being questioned by federal safety investigators tonight. Neither man was seriously hurt. Phil Walters, back to you.
And Phil, it will take some time before blame is finally placed for all this, and we're not trying to do that now, but we also do need to report that several railroad people we talked with just after this accident happened, after they had surveyed the scene, said that it appeared that it was Mr. Reardon's train, the number 7 train, that was in the wrong place up there on those tracks today. But the final determination will have to come, of course, from a full board of inquiry and from the National Transportation Safety Board. Joan?
Thanks very much, Ron. And as you might imagine, today's disaster in Gary affected rail traffic from South Bend to Chicago, at least for a time. At the South Shore Station here at Michigan and Randolph in Chicago, trains are once again going all the way through to South Bend. Some commuters, though, seem to have their doubts about the trip.
Well, naturally, I'm nervous, but, you know, I don't have a choice. I have to get through.
Railroad officials say everyone will get through. Although many earlier trains were canceled, several rush hour schedules are being met. Tracks at the Gary accident scene are reported to be clear and also reported to be undamaged, and commuters should have no problems getting home now, according to authorities. We'll, of course, update this commuter story throughout the newscast. And
the stop-and-go signal. They opened up one of the junction boxes, it appears, on the signal, looked inside. We presume everything is operating properly, and that means another train is possibly going to come this way across the bridge. We presume. Perhaps the signal is malfunctioning, and that's what they're up there looking at. We're just not sure at this point. After they cleared the wreckage out of here a little earlier, I was able to get up on the track, and I can give you a close look at this track layout we're describing. A red light, a semaphore. It means the same for trains as it does for cars. If you see it, you're supposed to stop, and stop on this side of it. That did not happen here today. The train collision occurred up by that knot of people. Just beyond that group of people, there is a one-lane, if you will, bridge. The trains are supposed to wait at the semaphore for other trains to cross. For whatever reason, that didn't happen here today. Earlier today, it didn't happen. It did happen here tonight. Earlier, we saw 2 trains come through here. They did get a green on the top. They did proceed right on through. This train has got a double red. It has stopped, and we're waiting to see what will happen next, whether there's another oncoming train or whether there's a malfunction on the light. And Joan, as soon as we know, we'll let you know.
thanks very much, Ron, and we'll come back to you later.
Let's go now to Channel 2's Rob Stafford at the scene of the crash for more. Rob?
Lester, the damaged trains were removed from this area earlier today. Just a few minutes ago, one of the commuter trains, though, stopped here on the tracks, and some workers have been out doing some work on the tracks tonight. Not sure if it's related to the collision earlier today. The collision occurred at 9:37 this morning. We have some aerials to go to here to look at the scene earlier today. 7 people were killed, as you said. It is unclear at this point what the cause of this fatal crash was. Was it a mechanical error or was human error involved? Federal investigators are involved in this investigation. They will be here throughout the evening and obviously in the weeks ahead, trying to decide exactly what happened here, and we will have the latest on the investigation coming up tonight at 10 o'clock. Back to you.
All right, Rob, thanks so much. And thank you for making...
Got off, walked all the way across the Gauntlet Bridge, where it narrows down to a single lane, and then, seeing with their own eyes that it was safe, signaled the train to come on through to violate the red light. Now, does that mean this light was malfunctioning earlier? We don't know. If it was malfunctioning in this way, it would have provided a double red light, and the earlier train should have stopped anyway, which it apparently did not. All we do know is that something has just occurred here that should significantly add to the confusion of this investigation. And that's all we know for now, Joan.
Thanks very much, Ron, and I'm sure you'll have more on...
Live on the scene of a train disaster in Gary, Indiana. Good evening, I'm Linda McLennan.
And I'm Lester Holmes, sitting in tonight for Bill Curtis.
2 commuter trains, one headed to Chicago, the other headed away from Chicago. Both may as well have been made of cardboard because when they collided, they sliced through one another like giant razor blades on paper. Metal was mangled, survivors were screaming, rescuers were rushing to beat the clock. But 7 people on this train disaster did not make it out alive. Tonight, investigators with flashlights are still on the scene trying to get a closer look at the signal switching box, trying to figure out what went wrong and why. Who may be to blame? Who made a wrong move? Who might have prevented this terror on the tracks? Here is the terrible toll: 7 people dead, at least 69 others alive but injured, some injured badly. Human error may be the reason this disaster happened. The crews of both trains are being tested tonight for drugs and alcohol. Lester?
Tonight, live team coverage of the Gary train disaster. We have 4 reporters covering the story. Let's begin with Channel 2's Rob Stafford at the accident site. Rob?
Lester, the investigation continues here tonight. Rail workers have been out on the tracks inspecting the area where the collision occurred, a section of track many people consider very dangerous. We apparently
their way down the slippery, snowy embankment. Some had been pinned in.
He was wedged between a set of seats. One was on his leg, one was on his back, and he was sort of like in a crouch position with his head bent down, and the wall was on top of his head. And he was talking and in good spirits.
After quick work to rescue the living, came the terrible job of recovering the dead. The tremendous force of the collision had literally torn many of the dead to pieces, killing them instantly.
But the guy, they had to lift, pry out the seat to get him out, and they just picked him up like that, just no head, no arm.
It was easy to see how this happened. It's up to investigators to determine why. The trains were traveling in opposite directions on a section of track which narrows before merging into one lane to cross a single-lane railroad bridge. Usually one train sits at a red light and waits while the other train passes on a green light. The signals worked. Now the attention is turned to human error. The trains were cleared away in time for the evening rush, and they were running close to schedule by 5:30 Monday night. And Ron and Carol, Gary's police chief says he believes the death toll could have been higher were not today a holiday. Even an off-peak run like those 2 involved in the accident would have been more crowded on a regular Monday. Back to you.
All right.